Jr. as the honoree of the 2014 Hispanic Ancestral Tribute. This evening, Hogar, DMAHL, and the LCC wish to acknowledge Pedro Aguirre for his numerous achievements and for his tireless commitment to bettering the community. As part of the honor, Hogar has the privilege of providing the Aguirre family history. I'm going to begin with the coat of arms. There are several variations in the spelling of Aguirre, of the Aguirre name. However, they all stem from the same heritage. The color red denotes the virtues of charity and courage. Those who bear the red insignia are obligated to right wrongs with fame in arms. The Aguirre arms is a red shield with a silver band between two gold escallops. The medal represents nobility, peace, and serenity. The silver band is associated with the qualities of purity and chastity because the medal withstands the test of fire. Pedro Aguirre Jr. was born in Dallas. His parents were Pedro Aguirre Sr., who was born in Piedras Negras, Coahuila, Mexico. His mother, Elisa Talavera, was born in Uruapan, Michoacan, Mexico. They met in Dallas, married, and raised their family in the historic area of Little Mexico. As parents, they offered a foundation for their family based on dignity and simple values that were ruled by a deep, abiding faith and discipline measured in a firm and fair manner. Maria Elisa Talavera's father was born in Tincamato, Michoacan, the history of that area. Please welcome Albert Valtierra.
Thank you, Joanne, for that nice introduction. Again, good evening to all of you. As Joanne said, my name is Albert Valtierra, and I am the current president of the Dallas Mexican American Historical League, or DMAHL, as we refer to ourselves. We're here tonight to recognize an outstanding individual and a leader, not only in the Dallas Mexican American community, but one who has served the whole community of Dallas for many, many years. However, before I say a few words about Pedro Aguirre Jr., our honoree, I want to talk briefly about the Dallas Mexican American Historical League and its mission. Put simply, the mission of DMAHL is to preserve the history of Mexican American community, the Mexican American community in Dallas. And we would add, not only is it important to preserve the history, we truly believe it's our responsibility to do so. And because some of our board members come from some of the barrios of Dallas, some which no longer exist, we can go to those families and friends that we know who lived or still live in those barrios, and we collect the actual history from them and or their ancestors. By doing this, we have been told that we are recording history from the bottom up. In other words, we don't spin the history like we think it was. We collect and document the history as it actually was. We do this by collecting photos and artifacts and then exhibiting these collected items at places like the State Fair of Texas, the Old Red Courthouse Museum, the campus of SMU, various branches of the Dallas Public Library. We have even gone to the Dallas Convention and Visitors Bureau to present our story to them. And we've even gone to the Oklahoma and Texas office of the U.S. Homeland Security. We got a little bit nervous on that one. Okay? Along with our exhibits, we have our Jesse Tafala speaker series of DMAHL, where lectures speak to the topic of the exhibit. And we continue to video record oral interviews. We have partnered for the last 2 years with the Latino Cultural Center and will again partner with them in 2015 as we present our major exhibit in September and October, which is titled The Untold Story, a tribute to Dallas's Mexican-American veterans and their families. We want to educate the general public about the significant contributions that Mexican Americans have made not only to this great city of Dallas, but to our country as well. Now, if I can get this started, we're going to show a film on Pedro Aguirre. You know me, I barely know where the on and off button is on my computer. And this video is a synopsis of the Pedro Aguirre story. So if Joanne can get us going, we'll watch the film. Historical, and we're historians. We want to talk briefly about the Pedro Aguirre that grew up on Mequinon Street in what was then the barrio of Little Mexico. And let me add here real quickly, I've had some people tell me that for years and years they didn't know that Mequinon and McKinnon were one and the same. They are. In fact, today, that area where Pedro grew up is uptown. Pedro says that his house is now the Azure condos because they were built on the property at 2812 Mequinon, right? Where his house once stood. But he shared with us that before moving to 2812 Mequinon, the Aguirre family lived in a house that was located on the land that became, and still is, Pike Park. He's also told us how important Pike Park was to him and to the community of Little Mexico, and also realizes the historical significance of Pike Park. And because he lived just a few blocks away from St. Anne's school there in Little Mexico, he attended school there, and then he attended and graduated from the now closed Crozier Tech High School, which sits about 2 blocks away from us, from where we are tonight. His newspaper route, way back then, even included the area where we are tonight. So we think that we can say that tonight, Pedro has returned back home. Pedro Aguirre has served and continues to serve on many boards. He was elected to the Dallas City Council in May of 1973, and just 3 months later, guided our community through what many consider to be the darkest time in the history of Mexican Americans in Dallas. 12-year-old Santos Rodriguez, who lived in the barrio of Little Mexico, was murdered by a Dallas police officer. Pedro Aguirre became a calming voice as our community galvanized and came together to protest this unjust murder of Santos. This protest led to many needed changes in the way Dallas is governed and how our community is represented and viewed today. Pedro helped move us forward 40 years ago. Pedro, if you'll come up, we're going to award you the reason you're here. Pedro, it's an honor for me to present to you, on behalf of the Dallas Mexican American Historical League, the 2014 Dallas Mexican American Historical Legend Award. Congratulations, Pedro. We thank you for all that you have done for our community and for Dallas. Pedro, here's your award. I'm going to turn it over to, before, I'd like to now introduce Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Monica Alonso, who will present a special recognition to Pedro Aguirre. Monica.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rivera, and congratulations. Oh, the center part of it's okay. Good evening, buenas tardes a todos ustedes. This is on behalf of the City Council, and I wanted to read it briefly, the special recognition on behalf of the City of Dallas. And I wanted to present it to you all. I'll have you share it while I read it, and very briefly, so that we don't take too much of your time, because I think this is your day and it's more important. Whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. is a founder, president, and CEO of Aguirre Roden Inc., with offices in Dallas and Austin, Texas. And whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. remains active with over 50 years of hands-on experience in all aspects of the practice in the Aguirre Roden business, which is engaged in architecture, engineering, construction, program management. And whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. has held many civic and private sector positions, including appointments during the administrations of President Richard Nixon and Governor Ann Richards. And whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. was appointed to the U.S. delegation in the 4th Inter-American Congress of Houston in Lima, Peru in 1976. And whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. was elected with a fellow of the American Institute of Architects in 1989, and in 1991, Governor Richards appointed Mr. Aguirre chairman of the Texas Board of Architectural Examiners. And whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. serves as a member of the Board of Commissioners of the Dallas Housing Authority, Board of Directors for the Dallas Arboretum, and Board of Visitors at Zales Lipshire University Medical Center. And whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. in 2009 received the Dallas Historical Society Award for Excellence in Community Service for outstanding contribution in the business community. Whereas Pedro Aguirre Jr. was recognized in 2011 by Latino magazine as a Latino leader, awarding him the Maestro Award for Excellence in Entrepreneurship. Now, therefore, I, Monica Alonso, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Dallas, and on behalf of Mayor Mike Rawlings and the Dallas City Council, do hereby extend special recognition to Pedro Aguirre Jr. for his exemplary career in the business community. Felicidades.
You may hold that, Pedro.
Look at it, one of the luckiest persons that has ever lived. I'm so happy to see that my mother and father were part and parcel and responsible for what I have and what I have contributed to the community. I'm the sum and substance of Pedro Aguirre and my mother, Elisa Talavera. And it was what they thought was best for the family. And you know, I don't care where you go, there's always going to be somebody that has a better life than the other. And by comparison, my dad was limited, but my mother was unlimited. And I can't imagine anything more important for me to talk about was, and that is the event that occurred during my first 3 months in office, and that has already been mentioned. that event changed my life. I knew from day one that my career was going to require that I gain the favor of people that have wealth. Poor people do not hire architects. Mm-hmm. And so it became obvious to me that the thing for me to do was to be as polite as I could, stay out of the way, and just do whatever I could to make myself acceptable, because I happened to be the first one in North Texas that practiced architecture on his own. And so I just knew that my job was in the production area, and so I had a partner to help get to work, and we almost starved to death. Were it not for Carmen, I wouldn't be here. And sometime later, it became obvious that it was not going to work, and so we had to switch roles. I had to take the sales role, and he was going to do production, and it's been like that ever since. In a way, it was a great awakening, but on the other hand, it was a necessity. And the fact that I had to take the forward role out in the public with the public meant that I had to accept the conditions under which I would have to succeed. And my mother, who anointed me early in life as her Santísimo Hijo, did all that she could to convince me that I was as good or better than anyone that I would ever meet. And I'm going to tell you, she stuck to that story. My father taught me how to work. I grew up on the roof with him, and every time that I remember being with him, it was always either on top of the roof, putting a roof on, or downstairs painting the house. And I asked him once, why do we do this? He said, well, we've already sold one client. The first thing they've got to do is frame it and then put a roof on it. And as soon as the roof is on, he can start painting. So there's no reason to go out and start trying to find another client. So from then on, I realized that we were involved in two different trades, and to me, that's never been any different till this day. And recognizing that this is an issue that sometimes causes some concern, because you can't be everything to everyone. As far as my dad was concerned, we have to have these many oars in the water in order to get any traction for us. And so, little by little, I began to absorb his wisdom and my mother's tenacity to convince me that I could do anything. And so, since then, the worst thing you can say to me is, you can't do that. And I tell Mom, you just hide out there and watch, because I'm going to succeed one way or the other. And it's not anything more than something that I was taught. And one of the reasons why I think it's important today is because, you know, what Albert called it the darkest day in Dallas for Mexican Americans. You know, that was 40 years ago. And nothing has changed. I remember the very first time that I heard about that. I'd been in office just a few months. And I began to get a trickle of his death. And I can't tell you when and how or what the sequence of events were. All I can tell you is that the bits and pieces that we got were not very palatable. But recognizing that my first responsibility was the city, I made up my mind. First of all, we got a lot of national press, and I turned down every request for an interview from the international media. And the reason I did that is because I realized that this problem belongs to Dallas. Y lo que uno no puede ver en su casa lo debe tener. And so we don't like injustice. We don't like any kind of demeanor of other people. But we have it here in Dallas. And it hasn't changed very much. And that's what I thought would be a suitable subject. Because until we learn how to talk to one another, not only about what we like, but what we don't like, but more important, we're not asking anybody to agree with us. All we want to do is to have you understand us, and it is our business to understand you. I remember that not only would I not interview with anyone, I did not want to be misquoted, and oftentimes my figures of speech go back to the way I was brought up. And some of them raised an eyebrow when I mentioned them. I remember that when I was at St. Anne's, a significant number of our neighborhood each summer would leave 2 months before school was out and come back 2 months after school started, because they had gone out to the fields in the Midwest or in California to pick grapes. And my father, at that time there were 5 of us, was often asked, why don't you take your family and go make some money? And my dad used to say, I left that when I left Mexico, and besides that, I didn't plant any crops, and I decided I'd never pick somebody else's cotton. And so I remembered that, and as a result of being in school for 9 months versus the other people being in school for 6 months, I realized that there was no wonder that I made some of the best grades in my class. And I soon realized in retrospect that I had and have an unfair advantage. Well, I still use that expression in my office. Our strategy on getting work is to develop an unfair advantage. Well, if people don't understand the point of view, that can be misinterpreted. And so, and that just comes from who I am and how I was brought up. I was brought up that you never give up. I remember my dad said, it's not the way you fall, it's the way you get up. And my mother, whatever it was, you can do it. You can do it. And so today, I still use those memories, that advice. And more than anything, tonight, I'd like to share with you some observations. I realize what my job was, and my job was at all costs to not only restore order, but to represent my community. At that time, even though I was elected at large, I was selected because of my heritage as a Mexican American. And so, even though I was elected at large, that was my job. That's why I got elected. And so the first thing I realized is that I have to reflect that leadership with respect for everybody, those we agree with and those we don't agree with. And so I realized then that whatever it took, that I would always be with them, one way or the other. And I think it's been recorded that one of the other council people called and called into City Hall and asked me to come over there, and he says, what in the world are you doing down there? And I said, what do you mean? He says, you don't belong there, get out of there. That's a no-win deal. And I said, you know what? That's what they elected me to do. And I couldn't give up the pay, because we used to get $50 a meeting, whether you attended or not. And so I just couldn't handle the cut and pay. And so the main thing was that it was a lot of tension. It was the only, as far as I know, it was the only riot in Dallas. And I want you to know that never once was I concerned about any personal harm, because I felt that what I had to do was the right thing to do. And as a result of that, I made sure that whatever happened, and we, by the way, our rallying point was Pikes Park. And so the thing that I never realized how many friends I had in some of the marches downtown. I got calls from everybody. And you know, the tragedy, nobody ever asked me about the family. How were they doing? How old he was? Why? The only concern that was expressed was the destruction of their property. And so it doesn't surprise me because that's just some of the things that people do. You know, you own things and you protect them. And so I grew up real fast with that experience. And it was easy to conclude or to draw a conclusion about how he died. But what I want to do is I want to share with you, it all settled and we were able to breathe. One of the things that I pledged to myself, that Santos Rodriguez, his death would not be in vain. And so the first thing we did, we leveraged that unfortunate incident, and for the first time ever in Dallas, we had a representative in every board and commission for the very first time. Since then, other things have transpired just from that experience. And while I know that it's very uncomfortable for us to talk about it, we need to. We have that same situation 3 times. Now, I'd like to go through the process that I used to keep myself in order. Above all things, I realized that I needed to be responsible. I can't do anything just on the basis of whim or unproved evidence or speculation. And so I had to treat everything with a tremendous amount of care to make sure that I'd waited until the facts. Well, it took a while to do that. And here's what the facts look like. I know for a fact that he was 12 years old. It was summertime. It was at night. And he was at home, asleep. And I can't really say that was hearsay. But I know he was at home because when they found him and put him in the car, he was in his shorts because it was summertime. The scene of the crime was about a mile away. So he didn't sneak up on anybody, he didn't threaten anybody, yet he met his death in the back seat of a car from a gunshot wound to the temple. Now, we have laws, and laws are to be obeyed by all. And they're passed for our benefit. And so we have to separate what our rights are from what the facts are. And the fact of the matter is that self-defense is one of the things that can justify killing another person. But if you look at the situation the way it was, there was nobody in danger. In fact, there were 2 policemen, both of them with guns. 12-year-old boy, and he's no longer with us. So there was no threat to either one, and yet the law didn't respond the way it should have. If we can't talk about things like this, then we are doomed to live through them over and over and over. We have 3 cases right now. And unless we learn the fact that we're not asking each other to convert and exchange ideas or morals or ethics, nothing like that. All we want to do is to make sure that we get understood and we understand others so that we can come together and discuss our differences, but celebrate the way we are, how much we are alike. And if we do that, I believe that we will be surprised we can end all these senseless shootings. The last one that I was just told about was a toy gun. Now, somebody came forward and says, we ought to pass a law that says that all toy guns should be painted a bright red or a bright color so that people know they're not real. Well, you and I know that you cannot legislate morals. The Old Testament is full of laws. But God Almighty sent His Son down here to tell us that we only need one law, and that is to love God above all and our neighbors as ourselves. And so when these horrible accidents or events develop, we need to take the responsibility. I remember my mother, after dark, would not let us off the porch. That's as far as we could go. Well, if for any reason she got notice that we had misbehaved or we had done something we should not have in school, I mean, that was the easy part. Coming home was the tough part. And you know, my mother was about this tall, and she had rules that nobody broke. She never talked to us about what they were until we broke them. And I tell you, we were not allowed, obviously I was not allowed to smoke, so when I did start smoking, I'd hide them in the hedges, and they'd wake up in the morning and be all soggy. And we had a curfew, you know, and by the way, we lived in the dividing room, we never locked the door. Never occurred to us to lock the door. Because all the people that people think burglarize the homes, we lived with them, so. I mean, we were it was easy for us to realize that you don't have to lock the door if you're with family. Well, I was out past my curfew. This is when I was a teenager. So I thought that we lived on Ward Street, and the door was half glass, and the top half. And I thought that I would sneak in and no one would be the wiser. Well, we never locked the door, so I didn't have to worry about a key, so I very carefully opened it up. And as I was tiptoeing in, she had ambushed me from behind the door. And her favorite weapon was an electric cord from the ironing machine, ironing. And all I remember was the first one came across here. Well, but by the time it was over, I knew what it was like to get scourged. And you know, the next morning we came to breakfast, and she used to cook our breakfast fresh every night. Every morning when we came home, supper was fresh, and the pancakes were this tall. And everybody sat around, and here I was, you know, with all the marks around me, and no one said a word, and Mom was singing, clapping, having a good time. You know what? That one incident made me realize that it may be some of these people that get in trouble and are caught out after dark, and they don't look like the majority. I can understand why a policeman would draw a conclusion that, hey, they're guilty because they don't look like us. And so sometimes we are, but when we're not, we shouldn't be classified as suspects just because of the way we look. You know, there is a quote that I recently came across that says, like a sheep, he was led to the slaughter. Like a lamb in the presence of its shearer, is silent. He never made a sound. And in his humiliation, he didn't say a word. Now, who is going to speak to his descendants? For his life was taken from this earth. I suggest to you that that is us. We need to speak for those that need help. The other day, I was asked, what do you make, and what is your stance on all these people coming across the border? And I couldn't wait to answer, because what I see is an act of heroism, courage, defying the worst odds that you won't be turned back. I can see my mother and father having done that in their own way, and I can certainly visualize Carmen taking my kids away to a better place to live. The sweetest words I have ever read is that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they're endowed by their Creator to the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why we attract the world to this country. And I praise God that we, as Mexicans, we're the current favored tribe. And the reason for that is that He loves us so much that He put us in walking distance. You're very kind to share your evening with us, and my family is here, and I think it's about 2/3 of it. I think we have a majority. Would you please stand? My family, please. And thank you. I want you to know how things change, because la vida cambia para seguir igual. Things have to change in order to remain the same. I remember early on growing up that when we had family celebrations, the most well attended is always Christmas. And in the beginning, the place that we met looked like the Alamo. There were Mexicans everywhere. Today, it looks like the UN. We have people from every tribe. And we love everyone. We love you for coming. And remember, it's as easy as just listening to the other side. Remember, no deal is a good deal unless it's 50-50. If you make a deal that is not 50-50, it will not last. Thank you again.